Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Paula Geraldo. My pronouns are she, hers. I work here at Health Resources in Action, coordinating with the Community Health Training Institute. Um, thank you for the next 1.5 hours of your time. So this training is called Posting for the People, brought to you in partnership between the Massachusetts Department of Public Health and Health Resources in Action. This is brought to you through the Community Health Training Institute, which is funded by Massachusetts Department of Public Health. We are excited to bring you this free training and hope that you leave it with a better understanding of how to amplify your message using social media. For those who have to leave the training early, just message me so I can send you an evaluation link to feedback survey. That would be really appreciated. So while I'm introducing myself, while we're all introducing ourselves, we would love it if you could also tell us who you are in the chat. Please let us know your name, pronouns are optional, your organization, and your role in that organization. Thank you so much. And just an FYI that today's training will be recorded for those who can't make it today. So I'll pass it off to our facilitators, Christine and Erna.
Thanks so much, Paula. Hi, I'm Christine Gordon Davis. I use the she series pronouns and I'm the senior marketing manager at HRIA. I have been in this role for 5.5 years, though my relationship with HRIA is much longer. I used to work for the policy team, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Erna.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone. My name is Erna Alfred-Liusis. I'm the Managing Director of Marketing and Business Development here at HRIA. I use the she series pronouns, and I've been here for just under 3 years. Prior to coming to HRIA, my career has been spent leading strategic organizational brand, marketing, customer experience, and business intelligence initiatives. So I'm really excited to chat with all of you today about social media because it is one tool that can actually support all of those things that I just mentioned. But before we get started, we actually have a poll for you. So while you continue introducing yourselves, we would love to get a better sense of how you're feeling about social media with this flash poll. So tell us, are you feeling super confident, i.e. influencer level? Are you feeling pretty good, so socially savvy level? Are you in between? We'll consider that a poster with potential. Or are you feeling social media-ly awkward? And I have to give Christine props for coming up with these very descriptive and catchy categories. So I will let the CHTI team let us know once the poll closes where folks stand. And then I'll turn things over to Christine after that.
Awesome. And we've got the full screen up now. Okay, everybody's answered. And let's take a look at these results here. We've got no influencers. No, that's okay. That's what I expected. I don't know that any of us would claim to be influencers, but we do have 7 socially savvy folks here. We've got a couple folks who believe themselves to be social medially awkward, and most 10 posters with potential. So that's fantastic. Thank you all. Oops, there we go. Share the results so you can all take a look real quick before we get into it. And thank you all for introducing yourselves in the chat. And I think we can move on to the agenda. Okay, so today we're talking about how to use social media for work. Our objectives, what we're hoping that we will achieve by the end of this session together, a basic understanding of some of the popular platforms. Destiny, thanks. We're going to identify some content creation and engagement strategies that help you connect with your audience and meet your goals. And we're going to learn about some best practices for content creation and distribution to help you be effective and efficient. With the advanced one, we're going to see we should see the agenda. There we go. Thank you. So we're just wrapping up intros. We're going to go into an overview of social media. That'll be a big chunk of where we are today. We're going to do a little piece on writing for social media. It's a very specific kind of writing. We're going to go into content planning. There's going to be an activity in this 30 minutes, and then we're going to focus our final 15 on your challenges, your questions, and hopefully give you the answers that you're looking for. Thank you all for submitting some of those questions ahead of time. It's really helpful. Let's advance to the next slide. Couple caveats about what to expect for today. We're not going to be providing advice on particular channel usage for you or your organization. That is something that we'll learn later today needs to be done strategically with information that we don't have. You know best what's going to work for you. And there are also no absolutes. Platforms change. We've seen this in very substantial ways in the past couple of years, and your organization's needs change. So we need to be flexible in responding to that. We're not going to be talking about AI written content. That's outside the scope of this session. And that'll do it for our caveats. We're going to try to get to as much as we can today. Let's advance to the next slide. Does social media give you the ick? It gives a lot of us the ick. I put together this fun slide for a different presentation. I wanted to show it to you all. But there's good news. We can continue to advance. You don't have to be an influencer to leverage social media to make it be an effective part of your strategy. Yay! So we're going to talk to you about that today. I'm going to pass it over to Erna to take you through an overview of social media.
Thank you, Christine. So we're going to start our conversation by grounding in some understanding about social media, specifically its landscape. So if we move to the next slide, you'll see the three things that we're going to focus on for this section. First, we'll define what social media is, and you'll be surprised how simple the definition is. And then we'll get into the particulars of the landscape today. And then we'll conclude with the types of content that are available to you and for you on social media. So first of all, when it comes to the definition of social media, which we'll see on the next slide, it really represents the technologies or platforms that let people exchange information and communicate. That is communicating through text, through voice, through pictures, through videos. The only real requirement is creating your profile. And that only takes a few seconds at the end of the day. But it's important to note that all of this, our ability to use these platforms, social media at large, the technology itself isn't that new. It's actually built upon historical things, which always gives me a little bit of a chuckle because we think everything is new. In reality, there are some precursors to this. So I won't nerd out on you now, but it's definitely something to follow up on in your own time if you're curious. Let's move to the next slide to talk about the different flavors of social media we've experienced in one way, shape, or form. So these are the top social media platforms this year by size. And social media platforms typically are measured by monthly active users. So that's the metric in the outside world that people use to measure growth within the platforms. And you can see, no surprise still, Facebook is up there with over 3 billion monthly active users. What's fascinating is we've all seen YouTube, we've all seen TikTok, and we've all seen Instagram and the other things on here. But if you notice, there is quite a gap between the top 4 and everything else. And it's not because one came before the other. In fact, LinkedIn actually started off or was launched in 2002, and Facebook came along 2 years later in 2004. But it's really what happens on those platforms and what tools enable people to share or exchange information at different rates. And also, some platforms are very niche in nature. So LinkedIn started off as a professional network, still is a professional network, looks a little bit more like Facebook because we're all used to Facebook, whereas Facebook has pretty much grown through acquisition. It's grown through copying other technologies. It's been very special. I guess you can tell how I feel about it. Now, if we move on to the next slide, you'll see another set of platforms that you should be aware of if you're not already on them or using them or have heard of them. So they fall into 3 categories. There's the short form version, so Blue Sky, Threads, Mastodon, Truth Social, those are all Twitter or X-like. Then there's short video, so there's a Chinese network called RedNote. It's a combination of TikTok and Pinterest, if you could envision what that looks like. And then there are the messaging platforms, which are really also, I think, some of the more interesting platforms. These are Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, WeChat, Telegram, and Discord. And fun fact here, WeChat has pretty much set the bar for all of the things that you tend to see on Facebook today. It started off as a messaging app, but because of where it is, so it is a Chinese app, and because of the societal infrastructure, people transact on WeChat. They've been doing that for a very long time. So they paid bills, they transfer money, they do all of the things that we do with other apps in life, all on that one platform. And again, it's possible because the infrastructure is there to support it. It's just the way that people are and go about their lives. So now that we've chatted about the platforms, let's talk about what lives on those platforms. There are 2 major types of content that you will tend to see on social media platforms. They are organic content. So this is anything and everything that people can create. There's no marketing. It's just whatever you want to share in terms of information or education or edutainment, education that's entertaining, what have you. That's what organic content is. It's seen by people who follow you. It's seen by people who follow particular hashtags that you might use. The only thing that is I won't call it unfortunate, but I'll call it challenging. The only challenging thing about organic content is we have an algorithm now. Most social media platforms do. And what this means is just because you put it out there doesn't mean people will always see it. And we'll get into the particulars of that a little later as well. But when it comes to organic content, the goal really is interact and share. Let's contrast that to paid content, which is exactly what it sounds like. This is advertising. So I'd say the majority of social media platforms now offer some kind of ad model where you literally can create an ad. You can segment out a population of people to see that ad for X number of dollars. You can also boost some of your organic content. So basically put it through the same process, but all of that comes with a cost. This type of content has a very specific goal, which you decide. And that goal can be anything from increasing awareness about your organization. It can be to get more followers. It can be to sell a particular product or service. Whatever it is, it should be linked to a particular organizational goal because it does come with a dollar tag attached to it. The last piece of content that I'll mention here, or type of content that I'll mention here, is curated or third-party content. And that type of content is basically any content that you don't create, content that lives in other places that belongs to other people, but you might want to share it because it either educates, it either supports a goal that you might have, anything else. That content is totally fine to use, of course, but the rule of thumb is to make sure you attribute or you tell people where that content comes from so that they can clearly see that it is not yours. You did not create it. I see a question in the chat about paid content paying off in terms of increasing brand awareness. The short answer is nothing is guaranteed, but I think we'll all have more time to talk about specific questions at the end of this section where we can get into a little bit more of the detail there. So now that we've built our foundation of social media understanding, I'd love to use that and your own experiences to ask you this. How can social media support the work that we do every day? And if you wouldn't mind dropping your ideas in the chat, we can get going on that. But tell us how, and if you use social media actually to support your daily work. I'll give you a few minutes to drop some thoughts in there. And maybe the CHTI team can read off some of the fantastic things coming through.
Yep, just waiting for answers here. So, okay, so some answers are from Mark, providing accurate and digestible health information to a general audience. Jennifer says raise awareness, advertise events. Michelle says inform and engage. Catherine says engage volunteers and donors. Emily says I work in youth prevention, so social media is how a lot of the students I work with communicate. Good point. Also, Molly says fundraising, increase awareness of our mission and programs, celebrate volunteers. Yesenia says getting the word out about what programs and services we provide so that hopefully more families can use the resources available. Holly says inform our students and families about our current programs. Michaela says advertise events and provide general health information. Help you find others in your field, areas of interest, and turn into clients, partners, or donors. That was from Kate. Mike says, we do not use it yet, but there are so many fast moving parts in local public health that I am looking for a fast way to reach the many Board of Health members in Massachusetts. Interesting. The last two here are Morgan says, raise awareness of food insecurity and policy and share programs and celebrate success for donors. And Belka says, regular engaging content helps make our organization or project more visible to a wider audience. Thank you all for sharing.
Paula, thanks for reading those out. If we move to the next slide, I think you'll see some of the items that folks have shared here also listed. I won't read them all to you, but it's a variety of things from networking to cultivating relationships and promoting work and influencing. It's a combination truly of things that you can use as an org, but also as an individual supporting your org and also growing your own network. Let's move on to the next slide. Great. Now, if we roll up all of the particulars of what people have talked about and what we saw on the last slide, they fall into some of these buckets. So creating brand awareness, expanding your influence, educating audiences, building credibility and trust, and of course, expanding your reach with partners, donors, potential clients, etc. At HRIA, we'll share a little bit about what we do with social on the next slide. We actually use social media as a way to educate, inform, and connect. And all of that really builds our visibility, our awareness, and our credibility in the space. It's really nice to be able to use the platforms to show not just our own impact, but also that of our partners, and in some cases, our clients as well. And there's some things I believe on the, yep. As individuals, you can use social media to do all of the things listed on the right side of the page and more. But I really want to draw your attention to the connection piece. The origins of social media were really all about being able to connect with one another in ways that we don't always have the opportunity to do. So when you're at a conference, for instance, you can, if you're not shy, I'm a little bit shy, but I still do this. You can go up and start a conversation with folks. But social media has the advantage now of before that conference even starts, you can start letting people know that you'll be there. And if the conference has a hashtag and you happen to use it in your comments, all of a sudden now you're getting in front of people that you have yet to meet. So it's accelerating your ability to build out that network, but also your ability to have a good conference experience, because there'll be somebody there, in most cases, many people there, that you can look out for and you can connect with. So now that you know what social media is, how it can be used, the types of content, we want you to keep these takeaways in mind. It is great in terms of supporting your goals, but you have to be really clear about what those goals are, and you have to be willing to put in the time to figure out how social media can best help you achieve those goals. But have no fear, because Christine is going to take the next set of slides to talk about some factors you should keep in mind when it comes to picking out the best social media platform for your particular initiative. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Erna. Yes, let's get into some strategic platform selection. And spoiler, it might not be all of them. Let's move to the next slide. First, I'd like to know which platforms you all are using. You talked a little bit about how you're using social in general, but if you could drop in the chat the platforms that you're using to do so. We've got, see, Facebook and Instagram, a lot of those, some LinkedIn. Good, okay. Instagram, LinkedIn. Okay, we've got some themes here. A lot of use of Meta products and a little bit of LinkedIn sprinkled in. Fantastic. Thank you all for sharing. Let's move to the next one. So let's talk about what we should consider when selecting a platform. Oh, we got a TikTok. We've got a TikTok here. Thank you, Sita. So when we're thinking about selecting a platform, tell me, or think about what process you engaged in when you were selecting the ones that you're already on, for those of you who were used to be on Twitter, but not anymore. Same, Kate. The primary question that we want to be asking is all about the audience. Who are our audiences? We have maybe a primary audience in mind, but there may be a few other audiences that you're reaching or wanting to reach. How do we aim to serve them through social media and in general? All of those are important considerations that we want to think about when we're making this choice, because this choice comes with a lot of effort. What platforms do our audiences use? Where are they? Are they where we think they are? Might they be somewhere else? Remember that list that Erna went through, all of those different platforms, including things like Reddit. Where might those folks be? What are they using social media for? Are they using it personally? Are they using it professionally? Is it someone at their organization using it, or is it them as an individual? What are your particular goals, your organization's goals, and how might that particular platform help you achieve those goals? Like Erna said, being really clear about what you intend for social media to do for your organization is going to help you kind of manage the expectations and also make the selection that's going to be most effective. Because I'll tell you one little anecdote. We used to be on Twitter. For years, I was writing tweets and I was not happy about it, as I'm not a particular fan of that for an organization, for HRIA as an organization, mostly because I didn't find it to be all that effective. There wasn't a lot of engagement. We didn't have a great strategy. It was often like almost like a cork board kind of thing, but really that information just flies right by in your feed. So it didn't feel like the right platform. And after things moved in a certain direction, we elected to stop using it because it wasn't helping our goals. The other thing that's really important is, what do you have capacity to do? We often see organizations using all of the different platforms, and that's a lot. That's a lot of work. All of those platforms have different types of content that get put on there or that do well on there. Oftentimes, if you're using, you can use a tool that can share the same content across all of these different platforms, but the same content is not going to work on all of those platforms. And the less focus that you have, ultimately the less effectiveness you're going to end up with. So all of this information is an input. It doesn't make the decision for you. It is all about taking this holistically and making sure that what you select is really moving you toward your goal and not just something that you're doing because you think you should be. And if we can advance, we're going to show some examples. Since I work at HRIA, the example is going to be from HRIA. We talked about how we're going to, we talked about broadly how HRIA approaches social media. Our social media channel of choice is LinkedIn. That is where I spend most of my time generating content for this particular, and it's been pretty fruitful. Our goals are to nurture a network of knowledgeable, passionate HRIA advocates. So we have lots of programs, and some of those programs have their own social media presence. We are talking about what is HRIA's role? What is HRIA's contribution? We want people to, be knowledgeable about public health as a whole, but also to know what HRIA does, who we are, et cetera. And we want to grow our mind share among our audiences so that people are thinking, oh, right, HRIA does that. Oh, HRIA is doing that really cool project. That person that I saw training somewhere, where were they from? Oh, right, HRIA. So our strategy to leverage LinkedIn as a platform is to post, right now my goal is 4 days a week, at least 4 days a week. Most of the time this is 5, sometimes I get up to 6 because I have a lot of content. We encourage staff champion engagement. And what this means is I will literally send a message to Paula and say, hey, Paula, I posted a thing on LinkedIn. I really want you to engage with it. Sometimes this looks a little bit different, but honestly, there's a lot of behind the scenes because people are busy and they're not necessarily spending all their time on LinkedIn like I am. Sometimes when it comes to conference attendance, I will make a toolkit and I will send folks planned posts that I will tell them to do. I will encourage them to do. I don't tell them to do things. Strongly encourage that they post before to say that they're going to be there, and I give them a custom graphic to do that. When they're there, I encourage them to respond to things that I'm posting as an organization. Afterward, I encourage them to post something that they learned, and I kind of structure this all in a toolkit. So those are two kind of wildly different ends of the spectrum in terms of encouraging people to participate. But I'm also there liking, commenting on people's content to make sure that they're also getting the reach on their own content. We provide some guidance as well. That's okay. We're going to keep going. There are some general guidelines that we have in a policy about what people should and should not be putting in social as a member of HRIA. We could talk a little bit more about that later, but generally, be a good steward of the organization is a pretty kind of the core thing. So, don't say excessively bad things. There you go. There's your guidance. Let's talk a little bit about the type of content and some of the metrics. We're going to go very lightly into metrics. This isn't all about measuring that effectiveness, but you'll start to get a sense of that. We talked a little bit about curated content on strategic topics. So for instance, this month is Asthma Awareness Month. We have some asthma related programs. You're going to see some of that as an example later on, but that would be, we don't produce research related to asthma. So often I'm going to other sources that do produce some of that research and customizing it and sharing it out with our networks for those folks who are interested in asthma focused content. Today we post my favorite post of the month, which is our career opportunities. As you might imagine on LinkedIn, a lot of people are really into that. So, and I set it up so that it is highly engageable. You can click through it. I'm usually on there looking for what our partners are doing. Yesterday, I posted something from our partner UTech up in Lowell, They focus on violence intervention and prevention. So I'm highlighting an event that they are hosting later this year. Any web content, we just launched a new website earlier this year. So I've started directing folks to some of the new content on that site. Then, given all of that, we're looking probably by post and also by month. You can break up these metrics over time. Looking at impressions, how many times have a set of eyeballs seen what I have posted? And then comparing that. There's not like necessarily a good number or a bad number. It is all relative. You want to see what's doing well compared to your other content. I'm not looking for something that has 1 million impressions. I'm not going to get that, and that's fine, because that would tell me something is wrong, actually, because that's not how my audience engages. Then we get to engagement. So that's comments, likes, views, clicks, shares. Anytime somebody is doing something, there's even dwell time, which is how long they're sitting there to read a thing. That's not something that we have most of them a good metric on that you can kind of see on the back end. But click-through rate. So exactly what it says. How many times are people clicking through something? And then we divide that over impressions to get that rate. Audience growth, this is oftentimes what you're hearing about. I have such and such many followers. We're talking about growth over time. So what is that rate of increase? And you can see once you get the, oh, thank you, Erna. I just saw your chat, my legendary social kids. Once you get the slide, you'll see a link here to Social Media Metrics 101, so you can further dig into that. Let's move on. How many platforms you should use. Again, you're back to the same questions with an emphasis on the capacity, what you're able to do. So we have a really small team in terms of putting this out. I'm kind of doing a lot of the social. I have a little bit of support, somebody who is pulling together some content in addition to me right now. That's not always the case. A lot of you have probably multiple jobs, and social is one of them. Or you are thinking about it becoming one of them. So this is a really important consideration, because you want to do it well and you want to do it effectively. You don't want to just take on every single platform because you think that it's absolutely necessary for you to achieve what you want to achieve. And I don't believe that's the case. I think if you have enough capacity and you have enough skill, you have enough resources to put toward it, sure, you can bring on additional platforms, but be kind to yourselves. Don't set that expectation. Your platform, you should be grounded in your overall goals. That is the fundamental truth. And that we can move on. There's always a caveat. So social media presence can also be a reputation management tool. This is less about generating content and more about simply being findable on a platform. I noticed yesterday on LinkedIn that I was trying to tag somebody and I clicked through. I'm like, this is why does it look strange? LinkedIn had created an account for a particular entity because they hadn't created it themselves. And there must have been some groundswell of people searching or trying to tag something. I'm not even sure how it got there, but I thought, gee, that's a little dangerous for the org and also a missed opportunity for them to be taggable, even if they're not going to have the capacity to generate some content. But this is ensuring that nobody's trying to pretend to be you, making sure your organization's information is correct, particularly if you have hours, if you have walk-in kind of interaction with folks. You might also use something to monitor what other people are saying about your organization. So I mentioned that we're no longer using Twitter or X, but I do have an X account so that I can monitor what folks are saying about HRIA on that platform, even if I'm not producing content there. Let's move forward. So key takeaway here, all things said, your platform, you should be informed by your strategy. There's lots of considerations, and it should be a discussion, a really thoughtful discussion to say, and possibly a staggered one if you want to start social media or if you want to explore a new platform. Ask all of these questions and consider what you're doing and where you want to be. Let's move to the next slide. We're going to do a checkpoint here. Want to see if we have any questions, clarifying questions. We are going to get to a Q&A section at the later point.
We do have one question, actually, Christine, from Jasenia, and it is about, I was going to wait till the end, but why not? It's about hashtags and mentions and the difference between the two. So happy, we can, if we're doing okay on time, CHTI team, let us know. We can take it now, or we can take it towards the back half of the presentation.
We're actually doing great on time, so go for it.
All right. Jasenia. Okay. And I hope, please let me know if I'm mispronouncing your name. That is a great question. I want to lay a foundation and then ask Christine to add some thoughts. So, first of all, everything differs by platform. They don't differ in terms of the meaning, but they differ in terms of the impact. So mentions are when you literally mention someone by name on a platform. So at Christine, for instance, means that she'll see that I've mentioned her in a comment in her feed, let's say on LinkedIn. So within her LinkedIn feed, she'll see that I've said something to her directly or pulled her name directly. And hopefully that will prompt her to respond. So you typically do that when you're looking for engagement from that particular person. I'd also say, depending on what you're asking them, you might want to give them a heads up that you're going to do that, because just because. Versus a hashtag. A hashtag is used, if you think about my conference example, for larger topics. So for instance, the American Public Health Association's conference this year, they'll use a hashtag for all comments related to the conference. It's an easy way to send a message about a particular thing to everyone that that thing relates to. You can use hashtags for other topics as well. Just do a little test for yourself, because the hashtags vary on platforms, and this is where the impact is also different. So on LinkedIn, they're there. Sometimes you'll see like thousands of people following someone, and sometimes, or something, and sometimes you don't. They all started from Twitter, because Twitter was short form. Back in the days when it was good. I said it. And that was just an easy way to track who's talking about what. They show up on Facebook as well, again, for categories. But at the end of the day, it really depends on the platform in terms of its use. Let me stop talking and let Christine chime in before I say something else that produces a reaction.
Thanks, Erna. I dropped in the chat just a couple quick examples of what that looks like. So mentions would be mentioning an individual at Erna, mentioning an organization at HRIA, which it would be at Health Resources in Action, parentheses HRIA. Hashtags can be topical, like hashtag asthma, or this time-bound phrase like hashtag APHA 2025 if you're looking at a conference. So something that I see people do that used to be right and is now not right is creating new hashtags. So something that was done maybe like 10 years ago, and I definitely did it for like my wedding, just to create a unique hashtag so that somebody could follow a particular event that's like special to you. Although sadly for my wedding, another couple made that as the same hashtag as part of their health and fitness journey. So that kind of ruined my aesthetic on Instagram. What I see people doing sometimes is like, just do hashtag like whatever I'm talking about. like say, like create a phrase. And unless that phrase goes viral, it is of no use to you. This would happen in Twitter because people would see stuff and they would start responding. Great example would be Me Too, was a hashtag that was trending on Twitter. And then people would see that and they would put their Me Too moment. And then it kind of swells. You see it in the trending list. That is how that became a thing. But a lot of folks will do that and they'll just say, you know, hashtag posting for the people training. That's probably not going to get you a lot of traction. That is not an effective use of hashtags. Like Erna said, you want to do a little research if you can to see how popular a hashtag is, particularly in this type of use of social media, because you want to use it to be found. Sometimes I've had success and I've had not success in using some hashtags. One recent one, World Sleep Day, was a hashtag that worked really well for me. Sometimes like hashtag public health, not as effective because it's there's a lot of people who follow it, but it's very noisy. There's a lot of people using it. So we see the difference in that. And hopefully that offers some clarity on how you might or you might not use hashtags and mentions. Any other questions we have hanging out here?
We
There was
do
one
have,
about
we do have one, but we're going to save that one. Just got a heads up from our team, so we're going to keep going.
Let's go. I'm going to go on to the next section, which is writing for social media, which is very special, as Erna would say. Let's advance to the next slide. So some people think writing for social media is very hard. It's very difficult. You're in a pickle. Or is it easy peasy lemon squeezy? Some people just, you know, particularly the folks who are big fans of Twitter back in the day, blasting off tweets. So much content. Let's move forward. Social media writing is a skill, and it is one. Let's advance once more. A skill that you can build. It is a learnable skill. And I've been doing this for many years. I continue to improve my skill each year because you see what works and what doesn't. It's a very nice experiment. But here are some key questions to guide your writing. I use this in just about everything that I write, and it looks like a lot of questions. It is, but you want to answer them all at least a little bit to make sure that your writing is effective here. So I'm going to take you through these relatively briefly. The purpose. What do you hope to accomplish with this? Each piece of content should serve a purpose. It doesn't need to be kind of a groundbreaking thought leadership piece of content, not everyone. Maybe because if I go back to my example, we have a lot of asthma work, and there's a great article about new data on asthma. So that purpose is contributing to let folks know that this is something that we care about. I typically work a little bit more on the purpose of less so social, but other longer form to make sure I really nail the purpose of things. To make sure that I am delivering on what I intend to deliver on. And that I'm not necessarily delivering on something else by accident, which can happen. The next thing is audience. And this could also be the first thing because audience is the most important thing here. You are speaking to somebody. You are potentially trying to get someone to learn something or do something. So we have to keep our audience in mind. Who am I writing to? And is my tone, is the type of language that I'm using, is it going to resonate with them? And we'll get into that in a little bit later specifically. Here, we're just naming it. Who am I writing to? Sometimes you want to think about one particular person that you're writing to. That can be a helpful exercise. So rather than I'm writing to state officials, you can say, I am writing to the Attorney General, Andrea, and I can't remember her last name right now. Should have picked a different example, but you can think about somebody in particular. When I'm writing, sometimes I will think about Erna. And I will say, I'm writing this for Erna. Or I'm thinking about our CEO, Steve Rodini, or I am thinking about somebody who fill in the blank. Sometimes I know that person, sometimes I don't, but I create a little persona. The message. What is the core message that my audience needs to hear? It's really important to specify this so that you can go back and look at what you wrote and say, did I actually include that message there? Oftentimes you want to, what is the hook? What's the thing that's going to draw somebody in? That's going to speak to the person that I want to speak to. For approach, what is the approach it's going to be most effective for my audience? And this is a little bit vague, and it's kind of vague on purpose. Is your audience going to respond to like an educational approach? Are they going to respond to kind of a cheeky approach? I like to use, sometimes I'll put a metric on top. I'll put 1 in 3. And then I'll say what the 1 in 3 is. So I'm trying to kind of spark somebody's interest. That's one approach. Or I say, did you know? Or we say something that kind of stirs up a particular passion in the target audience, something that they care about, and put that right up front. If we go to voice, we're talking again about the language. It's going to resonate. We got to think about the sensitivity of the topic, particularly in this time, because if we take the approach of putting something that's really going to like rally the troops, so to speak, at the beginning, how is that going to resonate in this moment? How is a particular, if I use, for example, the word rally the troops, is that the language that I really want to use here? Or is that not going to resonate with my audience? Should I be saying something, a different metaphor? Then we go into some kind of less of the writing and more of the process-oriented things, timing. What is the timeline or level of urgency here? So if I'm going back to my asthma example, Asthma Awareness Month is May. So posting about it in June is probably less effective. It doesn't really fit into my plan. Doesn't mean that it's bad to post in June, but I'm kind of thinking about it in terms of when this is really relevant when we're talking about an event. How far before the event do you want to be building awareness? When we're talking about something that's kind of in the ether, something related to the news. There was an example here about reaching out to some constituents and having social media being a means of communication there. So if there's a level of urgency, you need to put it out now, but you also think about what time of day, what day of the week are people actually going to be seeing this? Who needs to weigh in on this? Does somebody need to approve it? Do I need to ensure that my language is right and somebody else on my team? Sometimes you may not need feedback, particularly if it's you as an individual are writing something and you feel really confident that you're within the bounds of, what's to be expected from somebody at your organization. But if you're posting on behalf of an organization, you may need some feedback. Team, who are my collaborators? Do you need a subject matter expert to weigh in? So again, there's an element of feedback, but do you need somebody who is really good at making graphics? Do you need to pull them in? And when does that happen? I see Erna coming off mute. Jump in.
Not quite jumping in to talk about these things, but just as a prompt where we're running low on time, so we've got to move along a little bit more.
Thank you. Okay. So tips here, we've got 5 tips, and we can actually keep moving to the next slide. So tips for writing. We're going to make it a regular practice, 10 minutes a day. You can do more. Honestly, you can do less if you're a quick writer, but I would suggest 10 minutes a day to really get used to it if this is something that is a new practice. Or if you're writing for an organization, you want to write individually, dedicate 10 minutes to write individually. We want to write thoughtfully and not kind of blasting off tweets as one would back in 2008 or whenever that was. Always keep the audience at the top of mind. Why should they care? Don't bury the lead. Don't make them read to the end. People have a very short attention span. So we need to be clear. We need to have some brevity, more than I'm having right now. We need to have short sentences, not too much detail. This is something I run into a lot where programmatic staff want to put in a lot of detail because the nuance is very important. And I have to pull it all back because I know that it's not necessarily going to resonate with the audience, the broad audience that we have. We want to not just tell, but also show what we're talking about when possible. And we'll talk about some caveats here. Photos, images, these are going to catch the eye. They're not necessarily necessary all the time, but they do help. Screenshots, memes, all of these things can work. Remember to include alt text if you have an image that requires it. So that's an image with text on it. For the alt text, let me back up. Alt text is an accessibility feature, and it tells folks with screen readers what is on the image. It is available. It should be available in all platforms for them to be compliant with accessibility standards. It can, especially if you're doing an infographic, alt text can take a long time. So just keep that in mind. Aim for conversation. We're not just posting and running away. Actually, commenting and engaging with your content is going to build on the reach so that more people are going to see it. You see here that we mentioned tags and hashtags. This actually expands your reach as well. So there's benefit in that sense, so long as you're using hashtags that are worthwhile. We want to get people talking. Again, go behind the scenes. Tell people to go respond to your stuff. I'm going to text Destiny and be like, Destiny, please come comment on this thing. Or I'll comment on Destiny's post to make sure that we're having this exchange. Even if it feels like a little bit of fake it till you make it, that still works. Ultimately, we want to be consistent and authentic. Nobody is perfect. Some of our stuff is going to fall flat. All of that is to be expected, and it is okay. Not every connection will yield a new opportunity. Not every post will go viral. I have yet to go viral. I have one comment that has almost 3,000 likes on Instagram. I'm very proud of it. That's going to be it for me, though. Let's move on. Quick, better practices for posting. This is all channel dependent. We want to include a graphic, which we talked about. Video yields much higher engagement, typically, not always. I've had some videos flop. But it doesn't even need to be nicely produced video. Talk about video like shot with your phones. You've seen it and you've engaged with it too if you're on social media. So keep that in mind. We want to say something. And this feels a little bit silly to say, but we want to say something that people care about. We want to say something of substance. Why should a reader care? Why should they stop and spend a few moments of their day on your content? So make them care. And make sure they know what you're talking about. So let's use plain, sometimes punchy language can be really helpful. Depends on your brand and what you're comfortable talking about, the topic at hand, etc. Emojis can be helpful. You may not want to use emojis, that's okay. But you can. We want to include a call to action of some sort. What should a reader do? Should they know about a thing? Should they go to a link? Should they download something? Should they go to your website? It can be very simple. It doesn't need to be like, gated content that you're trying to just have them need to take action in some way if they want to get involved. Not everybody's going to do it. Again, when using graphics, we want to do alt text. If you're thinking, Christine, I don't know how to make graphics. What are you talking about? You can use tools like Canva. For video, you can use tools like CapCut. There's a lot of free things out there. It is easier than ever. I am not a graphic designer. I use Canva for everything. You're going to see some of it. Let's move forward. We're going to look at some examples. Okay. So I did some screenshots here, some examples of different types of content. The first one is from the Health Alliance for Violence Intervention. The Javi is one of our fiscal partners. You can see here they had a statement about a decision to sadly remove the former Surgeon General's advisory about gun violence. So, and you can see that that did very well. So they're making they're taking a stand, they're making a statement. They have a visual here, a very evocative visual as well. And you can see that people are responding. Comment, unfortunately, don't see a lot of commenting happening because I think people get a little bit uncomfortable, and same here. But you get a lot of reposts, you get a lot of reactions, so people clearly care about this. We move to the other ones. So these are some that I've put together. One is a repost of Boston Public Health Commission. They had a video here showing a naloxone box, I believe, at the Harvard Street Neighborhood Health Center. This is part of our, I believe, our You Can initiative. Yes. So I reposted and I also made a comment on the video. This expands their reach and also reaches our audiences. You see, I use the harm reduction hashtag. You can't see the whole thing, but that's okay. But it's a little video and it was fantastic. It was shot very roughly, but it really landed with me. So it was fantastic. Last one here, graphic made by our team member, Molly. She does a fantastic job, yes, using Canva. We're talking about fighting misinformation. This did really, really well. And oftentimes I find that the misinformation content tends to land right now. And we had an article. So this was curated content that we shared, and we had some hashtags here, and this did quite well. Let's keep moving. I'm going to show you some individual level content right now. So this is me. You can see here I had a post after I went to the Marketing Profs B2B conference. You can see Erna. You might spot Erna in my pictures here. See some of my takeaways and what I really enjoyed about the conference, who I talked to. I tagged my team members. I tagged Ann Handley, who is like the OG at Marketing Profs and the influencer in that area. I asked folks to comment. So loved that post. You can see over here with the little smiley face. That's my kid. That's my son, JJ, and he grabbed my branded mug. So I snapped a shot, not specifically for this, but I did use it here when we did our rebrand last year, and that one did really well. And then just a little status update for me about January. Womp womp. I think everybody feels that way about January. And just to show you, not because this content did particularly well or is all that meaningful, but like it can be really simple to write some content. It doesn't all need to be highbrow and super impactful. Just it can be an exercise to get used to doing it. Let's talk about what you're gonna write. And I think that is something that a lot of folks are interested. So we're gonna look through some topics. I'm just going to suggest some. A lot of you talked about promoting events. So you're going to want to share upcoming events. So you can do that on an individual or organizational thing, and then vice versa, reposting lessons that you learned from a past event. This is especially good for expanding reach because you can usually tag a lot of people. You can hashtag an event. It can be a component of your dissemination plan for a new resource. And I say component very intentionally because social media is not a dissemination plan, but it can be part of one. So if you have a report that's coming out, or a new infographic, or whatever you have, a new website, you can use your social media to share that to your networks. Tell people why they should care, though, because we can really, really care about these projects, and they can be kind of your baby, and you could be like, yay, put it out into the world, but remind people why they should care, not why you care, or also why you care. That's important too. Take a stand on an issue near and dear to you. You don't need to take a stand on every issue, but if you can pick one thing that you want to talk about, that is really what this is all about. And they'll give you the opportunity to talk to other people who care about that thing. Something that does particularly well on LinkedIn is to share a win or a loss and to talk about what you learned that way. Oh, thank you, Sita. All right. And those are just some ideas. And I want to note here, repurposing and repetition are your friends. Let's remember the rule of 7. For those of you who are not aware of the rule of 7, and I don't know that it's a rule, but what is said in marketing is that you need to repeat something or need to hear something 7 times in order to remember it. We don't know how specific that is. It could be 2. I have 1 minute left. Thank you. And yeah, you can repeat things. People aren't thinking about them as much as you are. Remember that a post must provide value to your audience. Your content that is valuable can be about an event, a resource, thoughts on a topic. It's all relative to your audience. And then I'm going to send it back over to Erna for content strategy and planning.
Thank you so much. Appreciate those practices about writing content. So we've got the writing, we've got the platform. How does it all come together? This slide tells you the 2 most important things you need in order to get your approach going. The first is an actual strategy. So you have to be specific about what you're trying to achieve with social media. And your plan is the how. So this is where you note exactly how you're going to implement the steps to get you to complete those goals or achieve those goals. In the plan, you'll probably want to include a calendar, a bunch of other things that we're going to highlight on the next slide. So that calendar that I just mentioned, you pick the format that works for you. It can be in Excel, it can be visual, whatever lays things out so you can see a whole month ahead of time is what we want you to pay attention here. And on that calendar, you're going to drop your key messages. So what are the absolutes that you want to make sure you convey during the month, on a particular day, etc., etc. As you're building out your plan and your approach, you also want to think about how are you going to measure your success? So how will I know something did well? Is it the number of shares? Is it the number of comments? Is it the number of impressions or views? You figure out what works best for connecting your objective to your audience and then back to your goal. And then lean into what's working. As Christine mentioned, this is a game of iteration. You're going to take all of the metrics that you use, and it's up to you what you want to use to measure your success, and figure out what needs rewriting, what you can just take off the table because it's not meeting your particular objective, and what opportunities exist to experiment even further, which is our last point on this slide. Again, nothing is static. Everything is up for grabs here. We have an example actually of a lo-fi version of a calendar on the next slide, just to indicate, this is a starter piece, what the purpose of the calendar is. It is to give you an opportunity to drop in any other content that might either help you with ideas for your social content or content that you should actually be, or events rather, that you should be incorporating, or themes that you should be incorporating in your content. So this is where we started at the beginning of the year. The other tool we want to share is on the next slide, because that also helps with populating your particular plan. That's our content curation matrix. So earlier I talked about curating third-party content. We actually have a list of trusted partners and sources of content that we put together, and that is where we draw on for third-party posts that we want to incorporate. So again, taking all of this, figuring out what makes sense to put into our plan based on what our objectives and goals are. And the last piece that I just wanted to highlight, and it's a shame that Sita left. It was I'll ask her question or answer her question as well a little bit later. But this is an example of a post that we've reshared to our network, so a partner post. And the things that I've circled and the arrows that you see point to some of those indicators of success. So the circle points to the number of times that this post was reposted. The arrows point to who's been interacting with the post, as well as how many impressions or eyeballs have seen the post. So just to wrap up this section, I would say the key to effective content is really consistency. It's consistency and it's the commitment to be consistent. When you have those 2 things and you add or layer on the planning piece, it's so much easier to be consistent. So with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Christine.
Thank you, Erna. Okay, so the moment you've been waiting for, the opportunity to practice. We're going to do a little group activity. And we're going to give you a scenario. You're going to go into breakout groups for 10 minutes. Once we're done with that, we're going to do a 5-minute.
They're actually going to, So sorry, because of time constraints, the breakout rooms will be 5 minutes and the share badge will be 2 minutes.
Great, thank you, Paula. All right, so your task will be to create a content plan. Here is the scenario for you. You work for a coalition that's focused on healthy aging. You've been asked to put together a content plan for Healthy Aging Month, and this is 6 weeks away. In this scenario, you have sufficient budget to get a little creative, but you are working with a 6-week deadline. Your task is to create this content plan. The plan might include, you may not get to all of this, especially since we're shorter, key messages, concepts for posts, approach to identifying content sources. This will be a self-facilitated exercise, so we will not be in there with you. You're on your own. We're here to support you. Thank you, Kristen. You can invent details when you need them. You're free to create, so you can create video content, you can conduct interviews, etc. We want to see what you come up with. We're going to look at some quick examples before we go. If we can advance to the next slide. Okay. As I mentioned before, Asthma Awareness Month is this month. So here's a little example of what we did last year. We do a kickoff on week 1 with a custom graphic and linking over to the EPA. Week 2, we're talking about state priority areas. Again, a custom graphic, here's the link, etc. If we go to the next, you can see some of the Canva graphics that I made. Just as an example here, fantastic. And that's it. Let's go into the breakout rooms and you're off. 5 minutes. For those of you who have come back, let's get started. Anything that I know that it was super quick. So tell me a little bit about, you could drop in the chat or come off mute. Tell me what you discussed.
Well, my partner Emily was amazing, had a ton of great ideas. She talked about how like just kind of taking it like, so each week maybe it's like a deeper dive on specific topics. So example, week 1 might be on like fall risk, week 2 might be on like dietary info, and then promoting resources each week along with those. So for example, there might be local council on agings or rehab facilities nearby that might be doing either additional, education or activities or whatever. And then resharing content already written by like experts on this like topic, and pairing it with like Canva designs and images. And then for the audience as well, like maybe targeting it to caregivers, people who are taking care of these individuals. So thank you. Shout out to Emily.
Great job.
Emily. I know we had some tech issues too. Anybody else had an opportunity to chat?
I worked with Steph, who is actually in the meeting under the name Michelle. That's her boss's Zoom account. And we kind of stayed in the planning stage. We decided that it made the most sense to identify the key messages first and then build the calendar kind of around those. And so in the time we had, we only could come up with 1 key message. Basically, we thought about, oh, maybe we need 2, but we only had 1, which is ways to age healthily, because that's what everybody wants to know, right? And Steph had the language tips for aging in place, basically. And so we thought a calendar or a month, 4 weeks, each week can focus on a different way to age healthily, basically. And we broke it into done into 4 different aspects of health and aging. So physical, mental, emotional, and social, which I thought was really nice. And that's as far as we got.
That's
Fantastic.
great planning. That's like the bedrock of it. So the rest is a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, Catherine was great for keeping me on track because I tend to flutter until I land on an idea. So that was good.
Oh, I thought it was great. I thought your ideas were so good.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing back too. I know that was much shorter than intended, but thank you for hanging in there with us. We're going to go into our Q&A section now so that we have time to answer everybody's questions.
Yes. And I just wanted to kick off while folks are thinking. I wanted to address the 2 questions that we didn't get a chance to address that were asked earlier. The first one is about calculating social metrics and how to do that. So within each platform, or in the case of Meta, within its business manager or whatever it's called now, I don't remember, there are a set of metrics that are in there. But if you're using a social media management tool like a Hootsuite or Sprout, there are also metrics captured there. And my rule of thumb is cross-reference because they will differ slightly. I tend to put more stock in the platform metrics themselves because that's the point of capture. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't use what is in your social media tool. It just means you should just consider it with double check. Just double check. Doesn't hurt. And it, again, I should say this as well. Social media metrics are vanity metrics. So you can't make business decisions off of how many followers you have. You can get directional information, but you should not be saying, okay, we've doubled our followers, let's start a conference. You want more information than just the double follower count. Christine, would you add anything, or do you have anything to add to that particular question?
I'll think just something notable that from my time on LinkedIn. The past few months have been a little challenging because a lot of the metrics are going in directions that we do not like to see. But part of that is algorithmic shifts. Part of that is also like what else is happening in the world. Maybe people's attention is a little bit more divided. So there's a larger story. And just as you shouldn't listen to necessarily be like, oh, look, our metrics are good, we should make business decisions based on this. You should not. If things aren't working, if you see like radical shifts downward, like all of a sudden your impressions are down, doesn't really mean that you're doing anything wrong. It means there may have been an algorithmic change. There may have been something else that you can't control. You will learn from it and see what else you can try. These are opportunities to experiment on things, but you're not in full control. It is a platform that you're on, so you have to kind of play by their rules to some extent. It is not an owned area, not your owned area.
Right. And the next question, and then please chime in if you have any others, is what's more impactful, text, video, or imagery? And the answer is, it depends. There is no guarantee what is going to drive impact. That's where you really have to be thoughtful about who you're trying to reach, who's on the platform, and what you're actually telling them. Are you sharing something new? You might share something new that is just in text form with an image, and it might do better than a video just because. Don't know. So to that, we say test, experiment, see what resonates with your particular audience, because it might vary, but there's no fast and hard rule for, yep, video always does the best. Not true, as Christine said earlier. So with that, any questions that folks want to ask us now? And while you think about questions, the CHTI team is going to drop a survey link for you as well. Ooh, Mike.
Yep. I do have a question. If I want to take a piece out of an existing, say there's a YouTube thing, and I just want to grab 30 seconds out of a 10-minute YouTube, what's the best tool? Right now, I actually, believe it or not, turn off all the lights in the room, come back into my office after dark, and put it on my screen and video it onto my phone, and then transfer it to my computer. And I can't believe that that's the best way to do it.
This is, I take it, content that you do not own.
I do not own it.
Okay, well, that's why. Simply put, Mike, it's really hard to take other people's stuff and like get the exact point of capture. But what you can do is add a link to it and tell the people that you're posting to, hey, I'd like you to pay attention to X at 0.10 or
Okay.
whatever the timing is. But that way also you keep it above board, acknowledge where it comes from without having to do a whole lot of all of that in the actual message. You can focus the message on what you want people to pay attention to.
Okay. I actually subscribed to YouTube thinking that that would make it better. Like when they come and sue me, I can,
Mhm.
well, I pay you dues, you know?
They have changed
Um,
how they treat. They used to be able to download videos, and they've turned that off. There were other ways that you could go about downloading it, and those have been stopped as well. You can share the video to start at a particular timing. So when you go into the share element, you can say start at 1 minute 18, whatever. I was doing that yesterday, actually. So you can't have an end point though. You can't slice that. So you would need to have the video file in order to use any kind of software to trim it. If you do have a copy of the video, if you can get it somehow, I use Clipchamp. I know that CapCut is another tool that folks use. I'm less familiar with that.
Okay.
I'm sure you can use Adobe. I can't use it. Adobe Premiere. But there are a few other things to do that way.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? We have possibly on the next slide a list of some that were submitted. Yes.
topics. But since we're still waiting for folks to respond, I just want to get back to Mike had earlier when we were asking for intros, shared that he wanted to use social to reach a board of health, certain board of health members. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, and we can
Well,
see if we can.
we're actually the member organization for all of the boards of health. There's 351 in Massachusetts, and
Ah,
they all belong to us.
mhm.
With the budget cuts that are going on right now and people terrified about whether or not they're losing their funding for various grants, especially the ones that have to do with shared services right now.
Mm.
We frequently need to get out to them quickly. And I was thinking that maybe I'm thinking about Discord or something of that sort. One of the
Have you asked them where they tend to be?
No, but actually, 2 weeks from now, we're having a seminar that will have about 150 people at it, and I think that's, we do 3 a year during
Mhm.
this time of the year in different locations across the state, and our next one, which is our last one, is Marlboro, and we've got I think about 150 people signed up already for Marlboro on May 10th. So, I think what I will do is spend a couple of minutes, maybe during the lunch break, just sort of grab the microphone and ask people what do you use, what do you suggest, and because there's a lot, and we don't want to go with a listserv. Listservs are awkward and clunky and awful, and want to do something a little bit more graphic that we can actually put things up on and show people. So
Yeah, I would definitely try to get the preference of the constituency that you're trying to reach, because all of these networks are great for different reasons,
right.
but the hardest thing about them is making sure that your audience is actually on them. And that if they're on them already, they'll make it a habit to seek out the information that you'll have. If there's any kind of barrier or any kind of friction involved in the process, then you run the risk of losing them. But if you hear directly from them, like, oh yeah, I like Discord, or yep, I'm on Messenger, or whatever the case may be, then that should help you put together a plan.
We can't, my inclination, probably because of my age, is Facebook, but we're taking on the administration and virtually everything they'll look at it as an insult. I'll end
Yeah.
up getting audited and sent to another country or something.
You don't want that, Mike. So put that off the list. Off the list. I use that as an example. Let's look at the rest of the pie of social media platforms. Let's keep you safe. Let's keep all of us safe.
Yes. They don't like us, so.
Oh my
Yeah, we're dealing
goodness.
with some strange times. And I mean, platforms have always been able to suppress things that they don't want and prioritize ads and do all of these things because they own it and we don't. So these are part of the considerations that we have.
Christine, you
And-
mentioned you mentioned in the beginning of your comments that a lot of times what you think is getting posted never gets out there.
Oh, in terms of impressions,
yeah,
yes,
can you get into that just a tiny bit because it just makes no sense to post something if it's never going to get there.
that's true. We don't have a ton of time to go into it, but basically, sometimes other things are prioritized. It depends largely on the algorithm, and you'll see it on the other side where you're like, why does this thing only have 100 impressions? It's really hard to figure out how to navigate that. That's something I'm still figuring out.
This is where the testing comes in. I'll just say very briefly, you have to test because each network has its own algorithm, and we don't know how the algorithm works intentionally on their side. But good stuff.
All right. Thank you so much for your questions, everyone. Thank you to our awesome facilitators. This was such an awesome training, and maybe next year we'll make it a little bit longer so we can really dig deep and dive in. But thank you all for being here today. Thank you for please providing your feedback to us. We really want to hear from you. We want to hear what your tips are for improving this training in the future, or what you'd like to see next. So thank you all for being here. If you have any questions, you have our email.